The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of Paranormal Buzz Radio or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is strictly prohibited. For information on everything Paranormal Buzz Radio has to offer, visit our website, paranormalbuzzradio.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Exploring the Unknown with Rebecca and Shay. Taking stories from today's news, Rebecca and Shay will explore everything from the paranormal, supernatural, the strange and unusual, unsolved mysteries, and more. Join them as they delve deep into the unknown and mysterious. Taken from news headlines. Water cooler chat with a paranormal twist. Only on Paranormal Buzz Radio.
Hey Shay, how's it going?
I am doing great, except for the fact that it snowed this morning.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Snow. I'm
Yeah.
done. I'm ready for summer. Bring on 60 degrees. That's what I'm looking for.
Me too, because I am so done with the snow.
Yep. Me too.
Yeah. So today we are going to talk about paranormal fears. What do paranormal investigators fear the most?
I really like this article. This is my favorite one, I think.
Yeah, it's a true. It like hits the truth. Like nothing funny about it. It just hits right on the head of what everybody fears.
Right, exactly. This is a good one.
Yes. All right, I am ready. Hit me with the story.
All right. Today we're going to talk about a CNN article dated October 26th of 2019. And it's entitled, Ghost Hunters Say This Is Their Biggest Fear and It Has Nothing to Do with Ghosts. David Schrader is creeping through the darkened hallways of the most haunted house in America looking for trouble. It's well past midnight and his paranormal team has been summoned to the 19th century brick house in San Diego because people say a malevolent spirit dubbed Yankee Jim has taken up residence. They report hearing his footsteps clanking down the stairs at night, strange mist floating through rooms, cold spots, and the sensation of being watched. As Schrader feels his way through the darkness, he senses that something is stalking him. So does Cindy Kaza, a psychic on his team who whispers to him, I don't want to be here. If you're trying to influence Cindy, you need to back off. Schrader, a burly man with a shaved head and a goatee, announces as he scans the room. You do not have power or authority over her. Then someone, or something, slams into the 6-foot, 280-pound Schrader. He's knocked to his knees as if he's been sucker punched, and no one has touched him. Someone just shoved me straight on, he says, a look of bewilderment crossing his face. That's nuts. It's just another night at the office for Schrader, one of the nation's top paranormal investigators. For the past 13 years, he has tangled with dark entities, listened to disembodied voices, and visited many of the world's most haunted places. The Haunted House Smackdown was filmed for Schrader's new show, The Holzer Files. In the Travel Channel series, he and a team of paranormal experts reinvestigated the secret files of Hans Holzer, one of America's first ghost hunters. Every day is Halloween for people like Schrader, or one of a new wave of celebrity paranormal investigators who have inspired countless people to form amateur ghost hunting teams across America. People routinely ask him about scary stories. But when CNN asked Schrader and other famous ghost hunters to share their big frights, none mentioned confronting entities such as Yankee Jim. People spook them more than spirits, they all say. One of the biggest secrets of the paranormal field is that it is filled with all sorts of earthbound hazards that newbie investigators never contemplate. Mentally ill people who physically attack investigators during house calls, unscrupulous investigators who stage supernatural encounters. Criminals robbing and beating ghost hunting teams in abandoned buildings. The living are much scarier than anything paranormal I've come into contact with, Schrader says. And then there is another little-known occupational hazard, the sheer terror of tedium. Nothing happens during most of the investigations. An estimated 80% of paranormal disturbances are ultimately attributed to things as mundane as bad housing construction, investigators say. There is something out there, and we don't know what it is, says Elaine Davison, an Oregon paranormal investigator, but I will tell you that most of it is bad wiring. So why do paranormal investigators persist despite the dangers? The reasons vary. Many had childhood experiences that stoked their curiosity. Schrader's grandmother used to visit him as a kid after she died. Others mentioned similar experiences. A ghost kissed one investigator on her cheek as she fell asleep one night. Another says they witnessed an exorcism. And another famous ghost hunter started seeing apparitions after visiting a healer. Some people also pursue this unique calling because they want proof of life beyond death. Others like the adrenaline rush, and virtually all say they've provided a service. They help grieving families who often have tried everything else to no avail. Sometimes they say they even help ghosts. What ghosts want is often what humans want, acknowledgement that they matter, Schrader says. He cites the story of a ghost who haunted a family until investigators discerned her identity. They hung a portrait of the dead woman in the house, and the haunting ceased, he said. A lot of these spirits have a story that needs to be told, and they have been forgotten, Schrader says. But paranormal investigators can't discover those stories if they don't take precautions. To help protect ghost hunters and the people who hire them, here are some safety tips from Davison and other leading paranormal investigators. Number 1, people are strange. Nothing seems to scare Jason Hawes. He helped launch the paranormal renaissance in 2004 with his seminal TV series Ghost Hunters. The show featured some of the most chilling footage ever captured on camera. Apparitions running through darkened corridors, household objects being moved by some unseen force, a cameraman who was so shaken after being attacked by some entity he started to weep. Hawes is back this year with a new series, Ghost Nation. In the show, his team tackles cases that have been left local paranormal investigators stymied. Part of Hawes' appeal is his gruff, everyman persona. He's a plumber by day and goes into each case intent on disproving paranormal activity. He started seeing apparitions after seeing a woman who practiced Reiki, an alternative form of healing. He also says encounters with living people make his heart thump the loudest. I get scared by homeowners, Hawes says. You never know who is also on the other side of the door. I'm not scared of the dead. I'm scared of the living. Once an elderly woman invited Hawes and his team to inspect her home for ghosts. As they were chatting in the woman's living room, she excused herself to go into the kitchen to make tea. 10 minutes later, she comes out with a frying pan and thinks we're intruders, Hawes says. On another occasion, a man had invited Hawes' teams to inspect his home for a haunting. The man had moved out of the house, but it wasn't abandoned, as Hawes and his team discovered one night. All of a sudden, we walk into a back room where squatters are doing drugs, Hawes says. The homeowner didn't even know they were there. Then there is another type of horror, that of misplaced diagnosis. Paranormal investigators will sometimes encounter people who report seeing demons or hearing voices. But the afflicted person's problem is mental, not paranormal, says Hawes, who keeps a psychologist on his team for such occasions. We've walked into homes where people are dealing with sexual abuse, all sorts of things. You always have to be on guard. Tip number 2, a ghost won't kill you, but this will. There are other paranormal hazards that people never consider, says Davison, who has written a book, An Investigator's Guide to Paranormal Safety. Davison says she became interested in the paranormal after a long-dead relative came to her on successive nights and kissed her on the cheek. That experience didn't scare her, but something else does. Black mold, toxic dust, and rodents carrying diseases. That's what paranormal investigators often encounter while investigating old buildings and historic sites, she says. Some contract illnesses fare even worse. One investigator fell off an icy roof because he was so preoccupied with setting up a camera. Another was electrocuted by a dangling wire, she says. Every year, paranormal investigators get killed, Davis says. Schrader, host of the Holzer Files, says some teams don't recognize the enormous risks that come from simply walking in the dark. I've been in places where people have fallen off the second floor because there is no railing, he says. Tip number 3. Don't play with Ouija boards. Other hazards can put a person's soul, not just their body, at risk, some paranormal investigators say. Consider this famous real-life story. A young boy in Cottage City, Maryland, loses his beloved aunt. He finds a Ouija board in his home and attempts to communicate with her. Strange things start happening in his house, such as mysterious scratching sounds on the walls and objects being moved by some unknown source. Finally, the boy becomes possessed by a demon that can only be driven out by a team of exorcists led by a determined priest. That story First reported by a newspaper, it became the basis for the 1973 movie The Exorcist. It's one reason some people say one should never play with a Ouija board. You're asking something to enter you, and you're opening yourself up to a world of trouble, Oz says. You're asking something to use you as a puppet. I would never open myself to it. Tip number 4, don't taunt dead people. Here's another paranormal no-no, challenging or otherwise provoking the spirits. Some paranormal TV series hosts who insult unseen entities and challenge them to reveal themselves. It's like playground taunts of yo mama meant to provoke a reaction. Schrader says that was his mistake in his notorious Whaley House, the San Diego paranormal hotspot, when he challenged the entity of Spook the Psychic that accompanied him. It let me know I'm not in charge. It knocked me on my ass, he says. Davison also warns against provoking spirits. It's mean, stupid, and cruel, she says. You could be challenging someone who is a 98-year-old woman. Would you want someone to do that to your grandmother? Tip number 5, don't be too proud to run. Still, there are some spirits who don't merely want to be acknowledged. They want to torment you, paranormal investigators say. If you run into one, their advice is simple. Don't be too proud to put on your running shoes. Run. Learn from the movies, says Glenn Washington, host of the popular radio show and podcast Spooked. Washington says he witnessed an exorcism as a teenager and grew up in a family haunted by ghosts. Don't think you're going to be a hero. You're not, he says. Wait until it's over and after the spirit, the monster, or the demon has left. Even the most intrepid paranormal investigators say they've taken such advice. Davison and a team were once investigating a home in Lebanon, Oregon, where multiple killings had taken place. As they were tiptoeing through the house one night, they kept detecting a rancid odor that would come and go, she says. A team member then turned on the spirit box, an electronic device that's supposed to scan radio frequencies, along with a unique synthetic noise that enables spirits to communicate in their own voices. Davidson says her team asked whatever presence was in the house to tell them what they wanted. They heard nothing. Then they replayed a transmission from the spirit box. In it, they heard a menacing voice replying to their question. It growled, "Get out." At that point, Davidson said, we all said, "Thank you, we're leaving." She says she's never figured out where that voice came from, and her team has never bothered to go back to find out. So I think those are some really good tips.
I agree.
Yeah, I particularly like the ones about the people, paying attention to the people, and paying attention to your location. Walking around in the dark is dangerous.
Surroundings, yep.
Yeah, because especially some of those abandoned buildings that people investigate, there's a lot of dangers there that if you're investigating in the dark, if you're not paying attention, you could fall through a floor and hurt yourself badly.
I think those would be my top 3 fears. People, animals, and physical hazards.
Agreed.
So.
Agreed.
I don't think people always take enough caution when they're doing this.
Exactly. Going to these homeowners' locations, you don't know those people. You don't know why they're trying to get you there to the house for sure. I mean, you think you know, but that they could have some ulterior motives. I've heard some pretty scary stories about that.
I have too.
Yeah.
Another good tip, I think, and I do this, is always make sure somebody that's not with you, an outside person, knows the location address.
That's a good tip.
Of where you're going. And
That's
certain check-in points, or, if you're going to be gone 14 hours at a location and they don't hear from you for 18 hours, who knows what happened?
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. I heard one story. They went to investigate and they didn't think anybody was there, but there was someone there, and they locked them in the basement and were holding them, and they didn't get a cell phone signal down there. And yeah. I mean, the ultimate goal is to, investigate and help families, but not everybody believes in the paranormal, and they can see this as a thing to exploit people.
Yep. Or there's a lot of, around here, there's like the Bridgewater Triangle, and then there's the Bennington Triangle. One's in, I think Bridgewater's in Mass, and Bennington is in Vermont. We've been to the Bennington, and we let, here, this is where we're going. This is the area, because one of the big claims is people get lost, and they never, So what happens if you do get lost somewhere, if you're outside? Or what if you somehow get hurt? Because who's to say multiple people? Because usually it's my sister and I that go alone. And what happens if we both were to get hurt and nobody knows where we are and we have no cell service?
Right, because I hear about people investigating by themselves a lot.
Yeah.
Just out by themselves. And I always tell people, at least bring one other person with you, just in case you fall and get hurt.
Even if they're sitting outside, I don't believe in investigating alone for myself.
No.
But if you're going to do it, maybe have somebody sit outside the location. At least somebody that knows where you are and can easily get to you if something happens.
Right, exactly. Back to the abandoned house situation, if you're investigating an abandoned house by yourself, you don't know how structurally sound that building is, and if you fall through the floorboards, that's not a situation you want to be in. And then, just even investigating out in the woods, you can trip and fall in the dark, break your leg, and be out there incapacitated,
Yep. Run out of water.
Mm-hmm.
It gets cold at night sometimes up there in Vermont. You never know.
Yeah, you just never know. I mean, be safe. Be safe.
Be safe and be smart.
Exactly.
So, I think that's the tip I would add to people. Just at least one other person. Exactly where you're going. Not, I'm going to Vermont today. I'm going to wherever. Exactly where you're going.
Agreed. They should know the location that you are going to be at, and when you think you're going to be there, approximate times,
yep.
So that they have something to go by in case you don't come back.
What happens if you get attacked by a bear or attacked by a person? That can take the whole team out.
Right, exactly. I think in the case where they were locked in the basement, there were 4 of them. It was a team of 4.
Yeah.
That got locked in the basement, and this person was literally insane and was trying to kill them. They did manage to get away, but
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. It was a crazy story, but one that actually happened.
Yeah. Hopefully people learn from it, though.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's crazy. Wow. I can't even imagine.
I can't either. It was one of those stories where I'm like, oh my gosh, that is a true story, and that could happen to anybody.
Could happen to any one of us. Yep.
Any one of us out there going and out investigating on a homeowner that's called you up and said, hey, I'm having a problem. I've got this activity going on. Can you come out and check it out? And then you go out there and you don't know their intentions.
Yep.
I mean, I like to think that everybody's honest and trustworthy, but the sad realization is that not everybody is.
No. Sadly. Sadly, no, they're not. So.
Yeah. And then the provoking and stuff, I agree. I don't believe in doing a lot of provoking on investigations. I just don't.
I don't either. I don't believe in provoking. I think it's rude. And,
yeah.
To say the least, rude. But.
To say the least. Yeah. And like they said, if that was your 98-year-old grandmother, would you want somebody treating her like that?
Yep.
No, I would not.
No. I try to treat them exactly how I treat people. That doesn't mean you can't stand up for yourself if something happens.
Right.
But provoking, to be nasty, to be mean, people always confront me on the word provoking. And when I say I don't do it, I mean in a negative way, because some people feel that any type of investigating is provoking.
Well, I'm thinking more specifically of the ones where they're screaming and yelling.
Me too. Negative. Yep.
Negative, trying to provoke a negative reaction. To me, when you're trying to provoke a negative reaction, you're going to get a negative reaction, and it may not be something that you want to have happen, like being shoved down, and scratched and that sort of thing. That, personally, for me, is not that type of activity I want to encounter.
Nope. And even if that doesn't happen to you, I think we've talked about this before. If you piss off a spirit or a negative entity, or God forbid something ever worse than a negative entity, and nothing happens to you, but you leave and it's pissed off, what happens to the next people that go in?
Yeah, exactly. What happens to the family that you were trying to help at that location?
Yep.
You've created a problem for them. Yep. And yeah, I've had people that have houses that they're having activity in, and they will not allow paranormal investigators to come in anymore because they've created more negative activity than before they investigated.
Yep.
So it makes it hard for the rest of us that are wanting to go to the location and help them with their problem versus, once we're going and creating problems. Yep.
You're not helping anybody and making it worse.
Right.
So, how do you handle people that provoke at your location?
I always remind them that it's my family. Granted, I'm not related to the Cambrys, but my grandparents, we've both had. I've had encounters with both of my grandparents at the farm. So, yeah, I always tell them that is my family, and you will treat them like that they are my family.
Good.
Yeah, we haven't really had a lot of problems with that, though. So
yep. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it. But on that note, our time is up for today. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We hope you enjoyed that.
If you want to continue the conversation, join us on our Facebook group, Exploring the Unknown with Rebecca and Shay.
And remember, if you have a story you think we should do on air, send them to us, and we'll give you a special shout-out during the show. Till next time, thanks.
Thanks.